MLB MVP race updated after every single day of the regular season just turned 100 days old, and I thought, what better way to celebrate than to look at the top 50 players from each league. Welcome back to Good Sports For You, where we are talking about good sports for you. And for this ranking, I'm going to be using a lot of different stats, but mainly OPS Plus and WAR are going to be my main two because I don't have time to do a deep dive into every single one of these players. For OPS Plus, it's very simple. 100 is average, 120 means you're 20% better than league average, 80 means you're 20% worse than league average. Not going to see a lot of players below 100 today. And WAR is just a total value stat. The higher you are, the better you are, basically, as it goes. And like I said, I don't have time to do a deep dive into every single one of your players. If you have a player that you really want to know more about and want me to talk about more, leave it in the comment section down below and I will respond and I will let you know like my full thoughts and opinions and breakdowns on them. But without further ado, let's get into the American League. Wait, before we actually get into it, I just remembered all the stats are from after the games of July 2nd. So the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, not in this video at all. Please enjoy. To start off our list in the American League at 50, we have Jeremy Pena. He's having an excellent season already with 2 WAR and a 122 OPS plus. He's 26th in WAR and 28th in OPS plus. And then in 49th, we have Riley Green, also a very good season, 1.7 WAR with a 126 OPS plus. The reason he's above Pena is just because he's played in way more games. 47th in WAR and 23rd in OPS plus. In 48th, we got Pete Alonso, 44th in WAR and 25th in OPS plus, also with 1.7 WAR and a 125 OPS plus, along with 19 home runs. And then in 47th, we have Jack Caglione breaking out this season. He's 34th in WAR with 1.9 and 24th in OPS plus with a 126 OPS plus. And then in 46th, we have our first pitcher. We have Bryce Miller. He's coming in at 2.3 WAR. He's 12th in terms of WAR for pitchers. He's only pitched in 52.2 innings. That's the reason he's this low. But in terms of a pound for pound pitcher, he's one of the best in the league with a 2.33 ERA plus. And then in 45, back to the hitters, we have Katsuma Okamoto. He's been incredible with 2.1 WAR, 24th in WAR, and 52nd in OPS plus with a 112. Just doing a very good job collecting a lot of RBIs with 54. And then in 44th, we have Paul Goldschmidt. In a limited sample size, he's put up 1.6 WAR and only 233 plate appearances with an OPS plus of 138 with 14 home runs. He's 49th in WAR and 13th in OPS plus. And then at 43rd, we have Dominic Canzone, another guy whose WAR is a little bit low at 1.5, 53rd, but his OPS plus is incredibly high in 9th with a 151. He also hasn't played a ton with only 223 plate appearances. And then at 42, we got Jonathan Aranda, another similar situation. He's 50th in WAR with 1.6, and he's 12th in OPS plus with a 139 OPS plus. And then in 41st, we have Ryan Jeffers. I included him just because he had been hitting so well. He has 1.8 WAR and a 162 OPS plus, but he doesn't meet my qualifications of that 200 plate appearances. He's just a little bit low. And then at 40th, we have Zach Geloff, probably our most complete player so far. He's 23rd in WAR and 27th in OPS plus with a 123 OPS plus and 2.2 WAR. The only reason he's low is just because he's only played in 62 games. And then in 39th, we have Zach Neto of the Los Angeles Angels. He's 29th in WAR and 38th in OPS plus with 2 WAR and 116 OPS plus, in addition to 18 home runs from the shortstop position. You really like that. And then in 38th, we have another pitcher. We got Cater Montero. He has been fantastic for the Tigers, putting up 2.6 WAR already with a 3.31 ERA for a 1.30 ERA plus. And then just above him, we're going to have Michael Wacha with a little bit more WAR at 2.7 with the exact same ERA at 3.31, but a lower ERA plus at 1.25. The reason he's above Montero, though, is just because of much more innings pitched, about 20 more. And then in 36, we're going to have Brian Rocchio, What a bounce back season for Rocchio. He's currently 17th in WAR with 2.5. The only thing holding him back is his OPS plus is a little bit low at 106, but what a season he's been having. And then at 35th, we're going to have Josh Young, another very solid season. He's currently 40th in WAR, but he is absolutely raking with a 136 OPS plus. That's good for 14th. And then at 35, we're going to have Jose Ramirez. Unfortunately, he did get hurt earlier in the season, so his stats are much worse than they could have been. He's 19th in WAR with 2.4 and OPS plus of 112. Only 72 games, though. Hopefully he can get back soon. And then in 33rd, we're going to have Sam Antonocci. He's 30th in WAR with 1.9 WAR, and he's sitting at 20th in OPS plus with a 132. And then right above him, we're going to have his teammate, Colson Montgomery. He's 28th in WAR with 2 even and 35th in OPS plus with 117. Now that sounds like a big difference between him and his teammate, between 32nd and 33rd, but the biggest thing right now is just games played, 82 to 67. And then in 31st, we're going to have Dylan Cease. He's currently 11th in WAR with 2.5, but the reason he's honestly this high is those strikeouts. 128 strikeouts leading the American League, and a 149 ERA plus is nothing to scoff at. And then in 30th, we're going to have Julio Rodriguez, just an all-around complete player, but we know that with 2.4 WAR, he's currently 21st in WAR and 46th in OPS plus with 113, adding on 14 home runs. And then in 29th, we're going to have our first and only reliever. We have Louis Varland putting up 2.7 WAR as a reliever, which is just kind of absurd to think about. He has been absolutely fantastic with a 463 ERA plus. And then in 28th, we're going to have Tyler Soderstrom. He's been playing absolutely fantastic with 2.3 WAR. That's good for 22nd. And then 36th in OPS plus with a 116. Right above him, we're going to have Aaron Judge. He's just a little bit lower just because he's been hurt, obviously. Playing in less than 60 games with only 261 plate appearances. But he's 25th in WAR with 2.1, and he's 8th in OPS plus with a 151. And then in 26th, we're going to have Cole Young. The exact opposite of Aaron Judge, honestly. He's 16th in WAR with 2.7 and 64th in OPS plus with a 103. The defense, though, is doing a lot of work for him. And then at 25, we're going to have Munetaka Murakami. Once again, another player who just unfortunately got hurt, but he's currently 27th in WAR with 2 even. And then his OPS plus is second with 159. Hopefully he can get back soon. And then right above him in 24, we're going to have Tristan Peters, his teammate. He's currently 20th in WAR with 2.4, and he's 34th in OPS plus with 117 from the rookie. That's fantastic stuff. Now we got a string of pitchers here. At 23rd, we got Parker Messick, another rookie who's just doing so good. 2.9 WAR with a 2.85 ERA. That's good for a 1.46 ERA plus. Right above him, we're going to have Davis Martin, a breakout season for him. He's currently 3rd in WAR with 3.2. ERA not as good at 3.08 for a 1.40 ERA plus. And then above him, we're going to have Nick Martinez, another guy who's having a real breakout season. 2.8 WAR with a 2.66 ERA for a 1.63 ERA plus. And now going back to the hitters, we're going to have Ben Rice. He may be lower than a lot of people were expecting, but his WAR is just straight up bad. He had a very, very poor June. He's 32nd in WAR. For a guy who's raking as much as he is, I feel like it should be higher. It's only at 1.9. And also his plate appearances aren't exactly very high for a guy who's played in 81 games, but his OPS plus is 153. And then going back to the pitchers, we're going to have JT Ginn. Honestly, I have not been giving him enough credit. He's currently 2nd in WAR with 3.2 and an ERA of 3.04. That's good for an ERA plus of 150. And then at 18, we're going to have Wilyer Abreu, another defensive first guy, but he's 10th in WAR, a first guy in the top 10 at 3.1, but his OPS plus is still very respectable at 115. And then at 17, we have a little bit more of a complete player. We got Randy Arozarena. He's 15 in WAR with 2.7 and 17th in OPS plus with a 134. Not as much home runs as I'd like to see, only with 8. And then above him, going back to the pitchers, we're going to have Drew Rasmussen. The former Brewer is killing it. He's currently 4th in WAR with 2.9, but his ERA is insanely good at a 2.45. The thing that's honestly, though, keeping him this high is his whip, the best whip in the American League at 0.87. And now going back to his teammate, another hitter at 15, we got Yandy Diaz. He's currently 18th in WAR with 2.5 and 7th in OPS plus with a 151. Now we got Shea Langoliers at 14. He's currently 13th in WAR with 2.9 and 29th in OPS plus with a 121. However, something that's keeping him a little bit higher up is the fact that he's a catcher. I value that at least a little bit. And then at 13th, we're going to have Michael Nelson Trout. Good to see him back in the game. The only thing holding him back is just a lack of games played. He's only at 74, which is a little bit lower than I would like to see, but he's 14th in WAR with 2.8, and his OPS plus is a 145. That's 10th best. And then 12th, we're going to have Cam Schlittler. He's going to be the final pitcher on our list. He's been the best pitcher in the American League right now by a good chunk of change, honestly. An ERA plus of 2.03, by far the best ERA of any pitcher in the American League. And the strikeouts at 123 is nothing to scoff at either. And then at 11th, we're going to have Ceddanne Rafaela. He has been so good with the glove. He has 3.5 WAR. That's 6th best. His OPS plus, though, is a 116. Like to see that get a little bit higher. And then at 10th, we're going to have Miguel Vargas to start off our top 10. He's 11th in WAR with 3 even and 19th in OPS plus with a 132. He's been so good for the White Sox. And then in 9th, we're going to have Byron Buxton, one of my favorite players. He's currently 12th in WAR with 3, and he's 11th in OPS plus with a 144. And then in 8th, we're going to have Cody Bellinger. He's 5th in WAR with 3.7. His OPS plus is a little bit low, though, only at 119. That's 32nd best. And then in 7th, we're going to have Dylan Dingler. How about a 3.3 WAR? That's the 9th best. And an OPS plus of 134. That's the 16th best. And then in 6th, we're going to have his teammate Kevin McGonigal, 2nd in WAR as a rookie with 4.5. The OPS plus isn't exactly where I would like it to be, though, only at 128, which is kind of absurd to say for a rookie. And then in 6th, we're going to have Wilson Contreras. He's 8th in WAR with 3.3, but he's 3rd in OPS plus with 155. But honestly, that suspension may bring him down a little bit. And then in 4th, we're going to have Junior Caminero. He has been so good in this past week or so, hitting so many home runs. He's 7th in WAR with 3.3 and 4th in OPS plus with a 154. And then in 3rd, we're going to have Bobby Witt Jr. He's 1st in WAR, but he's 15th in OPS plus with a 135. And then in 2nd, we're going to have Nick Kurtz. He's currently 4th in WAR with 3.8 and 5th in OPS plus with a 154. And then in 1st, as we know if you've been watching the videos, it's Yordan Alvarez. He's 3rd in WAR with 3.8, and he's 1st in OPS plus with a 191. So that was the American League. Let's move on to the National League. And to start off the National League in 50th place, we're going to have Luis Garcia Jr. What a good season for him, man. He's currently 19th in OPS plus with a 131, and his WAR is sitting at 47th with 1.5. And then at 49th, we're going to have Jake Bauers, one of my favorite players. He's 44th in WAR with 1.6 and 16th in OPS plus with a 134. And then in 48th, this may be a little controversial. We got Drake Baldwin. He's 42nd in WAR with 1.7, and he's 43rd in OPS plus with 119. He's getting a little bit of a boost because he's a catcher, but he's getting some points taken away because he missed a bunch of time. He only has 62 games played. And then in 47th, we're going to have Ketel Marte. He's 38th in WAR with 1.9, and he's 39th in OPS plus with a 121. And then in 46th, we got Mauricio Dubon. I feel like this was kind of just a little trade that happened for the Braves, but he has been so good. He's 26th in WAR with 2.3. OPS plus isn't exactly where I want it to be in 61st with a 106. And then at 45, we got Ian Happ, just Mr. Consistency here. He's 35th in WAR with 2 even and 45th in OPS plus with a 119. Seems like the same thing that he does every single year with 17 home runs this season. You like that. And then in 44th, you're going to have Johan Duran. He has been incredible for the Phillies with 2.1 WAR as a reliever and 21 saves, an ERA plus of 298. And then in 43rd, we're going to have Ty France. How about 41st in WAR with 1.8 and 23rd in OPS plus with a 130. And then in 42nd, we're going to have Ellie De La Cruz. Coming from the shortstop position, he's 34th in WAR with 2.1 and 36th in OPS plus with a 122, and we know the way that he can affect the game with his speed. And then in 41st, we're going to have Gabriel Moreno. He has been so good in a small sample size, putting up 2.2 WAR in less than 60 games played. He's 29th in WAR and 35th in OPS plus with a 122. And then in 40th, we're going to have Ivan Herrera. He's currently 31st in WAR with 2.1, and he's 27th in OPS plus with a 126. And then at 39, we're going to have Kyle Harrison of your Milwaukee Brewers. He's currently 8th in WAR with 2.8 and an ERA of 2.57. Even though I know the game today against the Diamondbacks, he didn't have his best stuff. And then in 38th, we're going to have Matt Chapman. What an interesting player. He's currently 15th in WAR with 2.8, and he's 79th in OPS plus with a 97 OPS plus. He's the only guy that we're going to see today with an OPS plus below 100, but his glove is just that good. And then in 37th, we're going to have one of my favorite players. It's going to be Hunter Goodman. He's currently 30th in WAR with 2.2, and he's 44th in OPS plus with 119. But the thing keeping him this high is those home runs, 27 from the catching position. And then in 36th, we're going to have TJ Rumfield, his teammate. How about 28th in WAR with 2.2 and 29th in OPS plus with a 125 from the rookie, I might add. And then in 35th, we're going to have Mason Miller, our final reliever of the day. He's currently 19th in WAR with 2.1, but his ERA is still sub 1 at 0.78, and his ERA plus is an absurd 5.31. And then in 34th, we're going to have another pitcher. It's going to be Max Meyer. He's been incredible for the Marlins this season. 2.9 WAR with a 2.53 ERA. That's good for a 1.60 ERA plus. And then in 33rd, we're going to have Geraldo Perdomo, kind of taking a step back, but 2.7 WAR. You will take any day of the week. That's good for 18th, and his 100 OPS plus is good for 74. And then in 32nd, we're going to have my boy Jackson Chourio with 2 WARs so far this season. He's 37th in WAR, but he's 12th in OPS plus with a 138. The only issue is he doesn't have a ton of games played, only with 51. And then in 31st, we're going to have Dansby Swanson. He has jumped up this list so fast after this past week where he has been crushing the baseball. He's currently 19th in WAR with 2.7 and 66th in OPS plus with a 104. And then in 30th, we're going to have Brandon Marsh. He has been having an incredible average. He's batting .315 right now. His OPS plus is a 131, which is good for 20th, and his WAR is 2.1, which is good for 33rd. And then in 29th, we're going to have Michael Harris II. His WAR is at 2.4, which is good for 23rd, and his OPS plus is a solid 124, which is good for 30th. But the defense is also adding some value. And then in 28th, we're going to have Liam Hicks from the catching position, 2.2 WAR, which is good for 27th best, and his OPS plus is a 132, good for 18th best. And then in 27th, we're going to have Zach Wheeler. His WAR is very good for a pitcher at 3.8. The ERA, though, isn't as good as some of the other guys that you'll see, only a 190 ERA plus for a 2.36 ERA. And then in 26th, we're going to have another pitcher. I'm going with Chris Sale. His WAR is much lower at only 2.8, but his ERA is better. His whip is just about comparable. The strikeouts are more. He's pitched in more innings, so I'm going with Chris Sale. And then in 25, breaking into the top half, we're going to have Seiya Suzuki. He's 21st in both WAR and an OPS plus with 2.6 and a 131 respectively. And then in 24th, we're going to have Luis Arraez. What a season for him, especially defensively, leading to 2.6 WAR, which is good for 20th best, and a 133 OPS plus, and that batting average is still sky high with 326. And then in 23rd, we're going to have another pitcher. It's going to be Eduardo Rodriguez. He's been fantastic for the Diamondbacks this season. How does 3.7 WAR sound with a 221 ERA, good for a 194 ERA plus? And then in 22nd, we're going to have Brandon Lau. I was looking at his stats. he has been a shockingly good defender. His WAR is at 2.9, which is the 13th best. So with somebody like him, you would expect the OPS plus to be kind of higher, but it's not. It's only a 120. But the thing is, his defense, like I said, has been kind of remarkable this year. And then in 21st, we're going to have Bryce Harper, 25th in WAR with 2.4, but 9th in OPS plus with a 141. Not the last player that you'll see from the Phillies with a lower WAR and an incredibly high OPS plus. And then in 20th, we're going to have Xavier Edwards, one of my favorite players. He's 12th in WAR with 2.9, and he's 24th in OPS plus with 130. And then in 19th, we're going to have Chase Burns, UT, and then he left. He's second in WAR, though, with 4.3, an ERA of 240 even. I was lucky enough to see him pitch in person, and he was incredible. 116 for the strikeouts and a 184 ERA plus. And then in 18th, we're going to have Brian Reynolds. He's been very, very good this season. 14th in WAR with 2.9 and 15th in OPS plus with a 134. And then in 17th, we're going to have my boy Bryce Terang. He's 7th in WAR with 3.3. The only thing holding him back is the OPS plus. It's a little bit on the lower end, only with a 122. And then in 16th, we're going to have Matt Olson. What a good player that he is. He's currently 10th in WAR with 3 WAR even and a 136 OPS plus. And those 20 home runs are certainly helping the case. And then in 15th, we're going to have CJ Abrams. He's 11th in WAR and in OPS plus with 2.9 WAR and a 139 OPS plus. As a shortstop, that's pretty impressive. And then in 14th, we're going to have Freddie Freeman, everybody's favorite player. He's currently 17th in WAR with 2.6, and he's 6th in OPS plus with a 145. And then in 13th, we're going to have the rookie sensation, J.J. Weatherholt. He's currently 4th in WAR with 3.8. The only thing holding him back, similar to Bryce Terang, but even more extreme, is his OPS plus, only sitting at 115, which is the 52nd best. And then in 14th, we're going to have the polar opposite of him. It's going to be Kyle Schwarber. The WAR is low at only 2.4, which is the 24th best, but the OPS plus is the 5th best, sitting at a 148. And then in 11th, back and forth between these good offensive players, bad defensive players, and then a good defensive player and a bad offensive player. We're going to have Andy Paez. How about the second best WAR at 4.1 and an OPS plus of 34th best, which is good for a 122 OPS plus. And then in 10th, finally got a more well-rounded player. We're going to have Corbin Carroll. He's currently 6th in WAR with 3.4 and an OPS plus of 137, which is the 13th best. And then in 9th, we're going to have Christopher Sanchez, our second to last pitcher. His WAR is easily the highest at 5.8, but the ERA is not as good as the guy who's ahead of him right now with a 2.24 ERA plus. And then in 8th, we're going to have Jordan Walker. He's 8th on my list. He's 8th in WAR, and he's 8th in OPS plus. How about 3.2 WAR and a 141 OPS plus? What a revelation he has been this season for the Cardinals. And then in 7th, we're going to have Jacob Misiorowski. He's currently 3rd in WAR for pitchers with 4.2, but his ERA is by far and away the best, sitting below 1.5 with a 2.88 ERA plus and 156 strikeouts. And then in 6th, we're going to have Juan Soto, the best hitter on the list right now. He's got a 165 OPS plus, which is the best in the National League. His WAR, though, is a little bit low at 2.6. And then in 5th, we're going to have Max Muncy. He has been just kind of under the radar incredible this season. He's currently 5th in WAR with 3.4, and he's 10th in OPS plus with 140. And then in 4th, I'm going to have James Wood. He's 9th in WAR with 3 even, and he's 3rd in OPS plus with a 153. And then in 3rd, we're going to have one of the breakout stars this season, although he was good last season. It's going to be Otto Lopez. He's 3rd in WAR with 4 even, and he's 7th in OPS plus with a 142. And then in 2nd, we're going to have the guy that has been my second for multiple weeks on end. It's going to be Pete Crow Armstrong. He's currently 1st in WAR for position players with 5.1, and he has a 151 OPS plus, which is the 4th best. He's just incredible. There's nothing else to say. And then in 1st, it's obviously Shohei Ohtani. He's the best player to ever live. He currently has 5.2 WAR between his two positions. It's hard to quantify, though, when you got somebody who's doing it on both ends of the ball. His ERA right now is sitting at a 1.58, which is just a little bit above Jacob Mizorowski. His ERA plus is a 1.63. He has a whip below 1. And oh, by the way, he has the second best OPS plus in all of the National League with a 1.59. But that was everything. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you guys so much. Doing this everyday thing has been absolutely so much fun. So thank you if you've been able to tune in, even just to one episode. I really, really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all those things. If you have something that you're like, I feel that this player should be higher, I feel this player should be lower, this player was completely left off the list, please let me know. I will try to respond to everyone. Thank you guys so much, and I'm out. Peace.